if you focus too much on the technical side, they're going to look at you as if you were just a scientist or a professor from a university. And that's not the look you want to have from an investor. They want to see you as an entrepreneur. They're not looking to how sciencey is your tech, how wow, this is like a next Einstein. They don't care about that. They care about what is the impact you're bringing. If you're chill, it ain't going to happen in 5 years. It's not going to happen. It's going to be like I say, a boldness, patience, balance equation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Science VC, a podcast about deep tech startups, venture capital, and more. I'm JP Orlov, and my guest today is Diego Stone. Diego is the CEO of Qnity, a pharmatech startup that uses quantum electrochemistry to develop devices for drug discovery and screening. Qnity was founded in Brazil, and its first patent was granted in the US thanks to an exclusive license from Oxford University. Today, I'm asking Diego to go over his learnings at Qnity and Krilltech, his previous startup. Expect to learn the advantages of being a second-time founder, how quantum electrochemistry is combined with AI to find new molecules, the difference between what investors and clients want to know about startups, and much more. Diego, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you, Juan. It's a pleasure to be here and to share a little bit on my history and everything I've learned on this journey as an entrepreneur.
Great. So why don't we start at the beginning of Qnity? How did you meet your co-founders?
So actually, I'm a bit of a late co-founder, which is a little bit of a fun part of this process. I met them in April last year, 2024, when I was invited by the folks from Gridx, who early invested on Qnity in 2023, to meet the rest of the team, to evaluate an opportunity to become the CEO and also a late co-founder of the startup. So I got to meet the folks in May, June, and then July, we signed all the papers and we got married, let's say. So that was a very different journey, at least in comparison to, say, my first startup. But it's been wonderful so far in this less than a year. I've been with Qnity and officially, let's say, and all the achievements, all the steps forwards that we have taken have been nothing short of extraordinary.
And what would you say made you take the decision of working with them?
It usually boils down to two aspects. The first one is the technology. I'm, let's say, a tech savvy fella, so I like to identify disruptive innovations, disruptive technologies that will revolutionize the market they're in. This happened in Krilltech, and the same thing happened when I was invited to join Qnity. So I had some sessions with the professors of my co-founders as well to understand a bit more about how quantum electrochemistry can help pharma companies, CROs, universities better develop new drugs. And this was exhilarating. So I think it all boils down to this, let's say, excitement on the disruption of the technology. And the second part is the team that's doing so. Because you might have amazing tech, you might have, like, say, the best tech out there, but if you don't have a team that's capable of delivering it, it's going to fail. So that's why I tend to evaluate the team also as a key factor for success in a startup.
Before we dive into quantum electrochemistry, I wanted to ask you about your previous startup, about Krilltech. You are a second-time founder. I'm really curious about what you learned at Krilltech that you are applying now at Qnity.
My second, let's say, I kind of joke around, my second baby. I've become a much more mature entrepreneur after learning a lot through wins and mostly from mistakes while doing so with Krilltech. Krilltech is in a different field than Qnity. Krilltech's working with agri-tech and more specifically with nanotechnology applied to agri-tech. And it was all bootstrapped. That was, I think, the first, let's see, learning curve that I had to take on how to bootstrap a startup. And actually, that's where some of my biggest mistakes lie. So basically, when we were working with Krilltech, we didn't have that much networking, that is that much opportunities into key players, to talking to key players in the market, specifically agriculture here in Brazil. So it was all done through sheer effort, a lot of sweat, a lot of days and nights spent thinking about this, working around this. But and therein lies the biggest mistake, which was we did not go for a smart money opportunity at first. And this would have saved us a lot of money, a lot of time, mostly. So identifying, at least for deep tech, identifying who your smart money investor, be it an angel, a VC fund, a builder, interbuilder like Gridx, anyone like that, is quintessential for your startup to succeed or to have a high chance succeeding. Krilltech, we were able to succeed. Yes, the company's still up and running. Uh, Large revenue last year, expanding abroad into Europe and so on. I left the company as a C-level in April last year, just before being invited by Gridx to join Qnity. But I'm still shareholder there. I'm still active on that sense with Krilltech. So we took, let's say, the harder route to success. And I don't recommend it to anyone. I recommend taking the higher percentage success, let's say higher success rate way for a deep tech, which is usually identify these key players. They are not that many. We in deep tech, we're not in a large VC environment like fintech, like other areas of innovation, of soft tech in general. So you have to identify who the best partner would be for this growth, be it either, like I said, an angel, a single person, a single investor, which sometimes it's amazing in the early stages. And it's something that we in Qnity have just closed, for example, an angel bridge round, but also identify later, let's say more mature investors, VCs, VBs, and so on.
What would you say is the critical part of smart money, the part that brings the most value other than capital?
Connections. Networking is the most useful part out there. Not only, I think, networking, but high value networking, because you can network with pretty much anyone out there, so LinkedIn or whatever. But to have meaningful connections, to have people that will stop and listen to what you're saying, I think that's the highest added value that and an angel VC can bring to you. Because sometimes you're just shouting in the dark. You might have an amazing tech, but no one's listening to you. So you gotta make people stop and listen to what you're saying, to sit down, to rationalize everything you're doing and see, oh, wow, this looks amazing. So why didn't I stop before to listen to it? And sometimes you need this push. And that's where the smart money comes in. That's where smart money can help you reach this next step. And and therefore, you basically can work with these new leads, new contexts, and evolve them into maturity, be it either a client, be it another investor, an institutional partner in the government to get you granting, get you funding, anything like that.
Great. And I'm really curious to ask you, how do you explain quantum electrochemistry to potential investors? I don't know how many investors are really familiar with this technology.
Let's say not many. When we were in Tulsa, we presented at the demo day last year at the program GridX at Tulsa. And I did the same. I asked the same question. Who here in the audience understands quantum electrochemistry? That was just this one dude,
Okay.
which was actually a professor from university, from a friend of mine from a startup from Argentina, from the GridX cohort. But he was like an outlier. So I kind of tend to, as a, let's say, I usually work as a middleman between science and business. So that's how I tread in this world. So I talk a lot to professors, so I have to pull up my academical background and understand it thoroughly and deeply what they're saying. And on the other hand, I have to translate that to layman terms, let's say. And the biggest thing here is to be able to get the goal, that get the objective transparent to the listener. So make it feasible. When I'm talking about quantum electrochemistry, sensors for drug discovery, at the end of the day, what I'm telling them is we have been able to develop this high technology sensors, so electronic components, which are able to analyze the interaction between molecules. And this is huge for pharma because we're able to understand these parameters and therefore identify the most potential candidates for, let's say, a preclinical or clinical trial. So focus more on why are you doing this than the how. If they want to go into the how, they will not. They will call like an expert to help go through that, but focus more on the why, and that's where the value lies in. So, who is your target customer? What are you bringing to them in terms of benefits? What's your key competitive difference to existing incumbent technologies or other startups which are working in the same field? So be more, say, straight to the point when talking to these kind of investors.
You're saying let's talk first about the benefits and then we can go into the technology if you're curious enough.
Exactly.
You're making devices that are very precise in detecting how molecules interact with each other, right?
Yes. Very precise and much cheaper than the current tech out there.
And how much cheaper would you say?
So in terms of analysis costs, so we're talking about 100 times cheaper.
Wow.
And in terms of the equipment per se, which we're developing, it's going to be 5 times cheaper. So a huge difference in terms of cost, while giving out results which are uncomparable in terms of quality.
Why do you focus on this specific stage of understanding how molecules interact with each other? What part of the drug discovery journey are you working on?
Basically, the technology we're working with has other potential applications, not just for drug discovery. Because at the end of the day, like I told you, we're analyzing the interaction between two molecules. And these interactions can be analyzed, for example, for diagnostics, can be analyzed for a high throughput screening of molecules. And but we're focusing on the drug discovery part because number one, it's an easier go-to-market strategy. When you go into diagnostics, be it either human or animal diagnostics, you have a lot of barriers in terms of regulations to do so. Drug discovery, at the end of the day, you're a lab equipment or a lab technology, and you don't need any kind of regulatory approval like FDA and Visa, anything like that. Um, and in drug discovery, let's say the latest development out there happened in the 80s and 90s. So there is a latent need for new technologies, specifically on the cost side, because the most advanced techs out there are really expensive. And SPR equipment, which is, let's say, our benchmark, uh, can cost to clients up to $1 million per equipment, plus the analytical costs. So a single cartridge, because to analyze the molecules you want to these equipments, you need equipment and you need cartridges, and you got to buy the cartridges. And each cartridge costs $6,000, and you can do like say on average 3 runs per cartridge. So that's $2,000 per analysis, just on the single cartridge cost. If you're doing 500 analysis per year, just multiply that and you can see how big your expenses are when using an FBR equipment. So if you're able to reduce the cost and increase the efficiency, not only will it be appealing to the current pharmas or CROs that are using these sort of tech into having more precise results, but also we would be enabling smaller pharma companies or smaller CROs, universities to have these sort of equipments, which they don't because it's so expensive. But with our tech, it wouldn't be. So we would be creating a new market and increasing the ocean size, let's say, by using our tech. So this is why we're working first in drug discovery, and it doesn't discard that we have on a, let's say, on a medium to long term plan to also go into diagnostics.
This show is brought to you by We Are Palta. Communicating science and its impact through your business can be hard. We Are Palta has a team of scientific communicators, designers, and specialists dedicated to bridging the gap between science and community. Having worked with more than 25 Deeptech startups and VC firms, We Are Palta offers from creating your brand identity to managing your social media. Go to wearepalta.com, that is wearepalta.com, and learn more. How do you build your product roadmap? How do you prioritize what products to work first on your pipeline?
I think the first obvious strategy is to identify the TRL offset product. So identify the technology readiness or the maturity of that product, how long it would take for it to reach, let's say, a TRL 8 or 9 on commercial steps for it. And like a startup, you ought to work with MVPs. So usually the optimal product is not yet developed. So you're going to be working with different stages of MVPs, like MVP 1.0, MVP 2.0, until you reach something you're comfortable with. Say, okay, this is really a final product. We don't have anything else extra to add on or tweak, anything like that. So work with these steps. At least in our case, which we're working with a device, we can use different minor improvements in that device. So we're working with, let's say, the device 1.0, the technology 1.0 right now, which we're doing these analysis in our lab. We will have the MVP 2.0, which we're going to put all of this, let's say, Frankenstein, which is out on the bench and the lab bench, into a box, and that's MVP 2.0. And then MVP 3.0 is we're going to have something integrated with AI, and that's let's say the next step for Qnity.
How are you going to integrate AI into that MVP?
It's something that we are actually talking to some startups in doing so, because in terms of drug discovery, the big fuss out there is AI data-driven startups working with, be it a simulation model or stochastic model, for generating potential candidates for new drugs based on existing data or existing models out there. The biggest issue with this process is that at the end of the day, you still need to validate the outcome of these models. And sometimes in the field that the startups are working in, the equipment is not that precise, like, say, for small molecules. And this becomes kind of like a conundrum. How can you test this outcome? How can you be certain that it works and you can take it safely to, let's say, a preclinical trial, which is going to be really costly, but you don't have any equipment to validate that? So it's there's this kind of a risk and risk assessment and in existence of an equipment to do so that makes this a bit confusing. So that's a potential application of our tech while we apply it together with AI. And the idea that we have in our group is to couple this with potential databases and kind of like generate a high throughput screening process so that we can then send this outcome to our physical equipment, and then we can analyze that and therefore have a very precise, a very thorough analysis of different molecules, biomolecules, whatever, and have this output that we can provide it to farmers.
Would you say that there are a lot of startups working on the AI part of the drug discovery and not enough startups like yourself on the next step, which is actually testing in the real world what the data says on the AI model?
Yes, that's true. That's true. There is a lot of there's a lot of startups working with AI, and the ones that are working with like the reapplications, they are more on the organoid testing area, which they develop like an organoid, be it either they're like I was talking to one from Boston working with fatty cells simulations or little simulations. They have a cell there and they are able to analyze how would that drug work around that specific that specific targets, be either for reducing fat tissue, or in different cases, working with cancer or anything like that. So there's a lot of startups working with organoids, but that's, let's say, a later stage because you can't be doing it. It's very expensive to have a zillion of organoids out there, and you got to be testing a whole database. So still, you need something that will give you a very quick analysis, a very inexpensive analysis, but also very sensitive. So that's where that's where our technology comes in. There's this like space in which there's no one working in, and where we see a huge opportunity to profit, to grow, and to become a relevant player.
What's the importance of having a player like yourself working on this space, on this step of the chain?
In terms of the ecosystem in general, it makes things smoother. In, let's say, a drug development process, to have something that can give you high quality data, which is something that sometimes you can get some databases, but you can't really trust the confidence level of that data is not that high. So if you're able to generate the data yourself, that's humongous. That's amazing. That's high quality data that you can use and therefore get a higher percentage of success rate or higher quality for the model you're developing. So at the end of the day, what we're selling is high quality and inexpensive data. So that is something that we can work in different areas with different players, and it's a big value out there.
High quality, inexpensive data. How do you further create interest in potential investors around this?
First is to show the uniqueness of the technology. Because if there's like a zillion companies doing the same thing, you're doing expensive and high quality data, okay, you're just another fish in the sea. But in our case, since we have, like, say, this competitive advantage, that there's no one really out there working on the equipment, on the tech, on the physical technology side for drug screening or drug discovery, we have this sort of early advantage. And a lot of these players which are connected with pharma, which work with early stage or with CROs, they see this potential because at the end of the day, if you're able to make it quicker, simple, this is crucial for pharma because time is a very big constraint for these companies. Since if you put it in a timeline, a drug takes like on average 12 to 15 years to go to market. If you're able to reduce, be it a fraction of that time, by giving them high quality insights, high quality data, this is a huge benefit for this ecosystem in general.
What would you say is the biggest objection that you get from potential investors? I mean, you can say that you are the only one working in this space, and you can say that you have better data and that you will reduce cost. Where does the skepticism come from potential investors?
I think the skepticism is similar to other deep tech startups, to what other deep tech startups receive. Um, First, there are not that many investors which understand technology, and more specifically, medical technology or pharma technology, chemical technology. So traditional investors, which only invest on digital, would not be interested because they're let's say ignorant to all this environment. So you have a smaller part of the whole environment which would invest in you, and then you got to go forward and usually these guys ought to have a lot of patient capital because deep techs usually mature much later on. But yes, they do have a higher growth rate after that. But still, it's going to be like 3 to 4 years before the startups start generating something relevant in terms of capital, in terms of sales, and so on. So that's the biggest challenge for Deeptech, not just for Qnity, but for the whole ecosystem in general, be it in Brazil, in the US, wherever, is how patient is the capital, and let's say how interested is this this investor, this investor, in helping you achieve that state sooner. Because sometimes investors just want to put some money in you and say, bye bye, I'll see you in a year from now. We have the revenue and DR meetings, and so you can share all your financial statements, data, whatever. And that's not really it. That's something that you need to have invested people working with you and bringing you uh, uh, companies, partners interested in technology, potential clients, even new members for your staff. You can better grow and better scale and do it faster and with higher success. It's not easy to find this kind of people.
Waiting for the startup to come back with revenue or with an exit doesn't sound like smart money, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. So and once again, to be smart, the money needs to understand the market. So you're getting to smaller and smaller groups, and that's let's say that's the biggest objective for a pharmatech like us. We have to understand who this person would be, where they are. So you got to connect. They're not like all in one place. They're dispersed around the globe. So identify who these players are. The same thing goes for an agri-tech. You got to identify who the players are, uh, who will be able to bring you valuable insights. So this is like a painstaking job to identify these people, to make sure they are the right people, they have the right fit for what you're looking for, and therefore move forward with them and also convince them that you are the perfect fit. It's also important that you have a big power of convincing these fellas that you're gonna revolutionize market X, Y, Z with your amazing technology, with your amazing go-to-market strategy, and so on.
For the deep tech startup founders that are listening to this, what's your most important advice that you could give them about fundraising?
I think be very, let's say, non-technical in your presentations. That's important because if you focus too much on the technical side, they're going to look at you as if you were just a scientist or a professor from university. And that's not the look you want to have from an investor. They want to see you as an entrepreneur. So, as someone that's bold and willing to take the next step. And to do so, you got to understand, yes, the technology for sure that's essential because you're going to know the limits and constraints your tech has and how can you surpass them. But also be mindful of the market you're in, the the pains and the value you're bringing to your customers, to your clients, and make that very tangible and make that very obvious to the investor because that's what they're looking into. They're not looking into how sciencey is your text, how wow, this is like a next Einstein. They don't care about that. They care about what is the impact you're bringing. And impacts you can measure a lot of ways, but mostly they're going to be looking at the economic, financial impact you're bringing to your clients.
With the benefit of hindsight, what would you say was the best use of your initial capital and what was the one that you would do differently?
For, let's say, for Krilltech, it was building up our factory. That was quintessential because that's what allowed us to generate, because we're working with products. So that was what allowed us to get straight to the market, produce a lot, have a high gross margin, and so on. So I think that was in our case for a tangible product, not a service startup. Um, that was the most important aspect of initial capital. And but for Qnity, I think is creating this relationships with universities, with institutions we have our lab in. Because at the end of the day, in this early stage we're in, we don't have like a huge lab. We don't have our old building. We don't have anything like that. So you're all dependent on the relationship we build with universities, with these institutes. And sometimes the relationships come through agreements, and these agreements to use the lab to have like the sole use of a specific area, and so that we can further develop the startup. So using the capital to develop these relationships to make them come to fruition is, yeah, of the utmost importance.
Talking about universities, your partnership with Oxford University is impressive. How did you come to that?
I think that's a question of who comes first, the egg or the chicken. So it all happened because my co-founders, they were professors and a PhD student at the State University of São Paulo, UNESP. And they were working with quantum electrochemistry since 2011, and a long time ago, like more 10 years plus. Um, and in 2018, they were working together with Oxford in this area, and they were invited to go there to, with the team from the Oxford University, develop some patents and some technology in that sense. And they did so. They stayed there like for some years. Uh, and out of that collaboration, came several patents. So one of these patents actually turned into, let's say, our bigger sister, which is Osler Diagnostics. It's an already Series C startup, founded in 2018. Um, and this startup basically working with rapid testing, rapid diagnostics, not with quantum electrochemistry, with classical electrochemistry mostly, but they're out there already, mostly focused on the B2C approach, very different from what we're doing, but still our biggest sister. And the other patents, actually two other patents that came out of this collaboration, became, let's say, the basic foundation for Qnity. So, and we have like this licensing done with them, with Oxford, and someone we've been talking to them very constantly about this, mostly with OSE, which is Oxford Science Enterprises, which is basically like say their arm for IP and also startup ventures.
How would you articulate your IP strategy moving forward?
Since we are very deep tech, IP is very important to us. So having a strong IP portfolio is in our plans, but also further developing this IP portfolio with strategic partners. Sometimes diversifying a little bit, working with something new with a different partner from than Oxford and the University of São Paulo is something that we have in mind, in a way to have a broader portfolio, but also have more and more relationships with interested parties out there, which we deem very important for our strategy, be either to have a good marketing strategy, but also to have a good protection of the all the knowledge that we have been able to develop inside the group.
How do you think about marketing in such deep tech?
It's not, let's say, Instagram marketing. Totally not. Totally different. So it's more targeted. So it's targeted market that we are looking in the specific professionals, CTOs, CROs of the companies that would be using our technology, or deans of specific departments in universities that would be interested in learning more about our tech. Um, so it's a much more relationship based marketing than a broad marketing or advertisements. It's something that we're not going to do. It doesn't make any sense at all. We are a B2B company, and our tech is very tech. So we have to create this sort of relationship. So be in present in specific events, professional events. Be present in these conferences in which, let's say, the fringe science about this area is being discussed, so we can be visible to these people, and can then further develop this relationship, and therefore create a commercial relationship based on that as well. So it's much more, let's say, comes from the scientific relationship, and with specific people, and then you can move forward to commercializing that and turning that into revenue.
Would you say that you have a bucket of more scientific communication for those people and then like a very surface level for potential investors?
Yes, yes. So on the, let's say, on the client side, we have to be very scientific. On the investor side, not that much. So there's this balance. That's why I was joking around that I like to be the middleman, because you have to change your tone depending on who you're talking to. On the client level, be extra technical. Bring them all the benefits that your technology can give out. But on the investor side, be mindful, say, okay, so we're working with, let's say, Merck, we're working with Pfizer, we're working with these guys because they need more data into their drug discovery process. Don't go into the tech details. That's Some investors might be interested in that, but this is like a small percentage, and they're going to ask you if they are. You don't need to do it out of your own volition. Do that. So just be very pragmatic when talking to the investor into what your the value. That's something you gotta keep in mind when talking to an investor. What is the value you're bringing?
Right.
What is the very value you're already delivering if you're already doing so?
So let's get very pragmatical. If you want investors to leave a conversation with you with one insight about the value that you are creating, what would that insight be?
I think I would be very satisfied if an investor came out of a conversation with us and said, "Oh, these guys are bringing a huge disruption to pharmas. They're reducing the value, the cost of evaluating a new drug, but also opening up new avenues for drug discovery with new molecules that are not available to be analyzed out there." So I think these are the two, at least for Qnity, the two major values that we're bringing: cost reduction at the end of the day, and quality, sensitivity, you might say precision of the data. And that's these are the two words or two expressions of the that we want investors to understand and think about how impactful this can be to the market.
Talking about the market, the drug discovery market is massive and it keeps growing and evolving. Where do you see that market in 5 to 10 years, let's say?
We see it growing even more. Not only us, but the data shows that we have average CAGRs of two double digits. Uh, And if you think about new trends out there for new mRNA vaccines, or new targeted cancer treatments, or new drugs for specific rare diseases, there is a lot of opportunities. I think the two major markets in which opportunities are not gonna be lackluster is health and food, because at the end of the day, we're living longer. So health is always longevity is a very big topic nowadays. In food, we're until the day we become like plants and we can generate our own food, and someone does that weird genetic modification of a human being, we will still need to eat food. So, and the population's still growing. Maybe not in the developed world, but more in the third world, underdeveloped countries. But still, food and food quality are huge aspects, huge themes, which are sometimes interconnected with health because you're talking about high quality food. You're talking about food as treating a process for diseases. So that's these are the two major aspects which are not gonna not gonna go down. Actually, they're gonna go way, way, way higher because we haven't yet reached, let's say, plateau levels for health quality and food quality. So we need more technologies to do so. We need more investment. We need more outcomes into this kind of technology, so that we can reach, let's say, utopia level for life quality in general.
We will get back to talking to Diego in just 30 seconds, but first, let me tell you about We Are Palta. Raising funds for your startup requires clear and effective communication with your potential investors. That's why We Are Palta works with Deeptech companies to highlight your team strengths and your commercial traction. Discover how graphic designers can enhance your pitch deck by going to the link in the description below or by visiting wearepalta.com. That is WEAREPALTA.com. About investments, how would you describe your fundraising journey so far at Qnity?
So 2023, we did the pre-seed with Gridx. We were part of the Ignite program, invested by them. This last month, right now, January and February, we have raised a small angel bridge round. We did that so mainly because of two reasons. Number one is we're going to receive a grant from the government, and there's like this kind of a carbon counterpart for that grant, a 2% counterpart. So we're going to use part of that fund for it. And the second reason is we were invited by a fund in the U.S. by Atento Capital and folks from in a program that we were part in last year. I mentioned previously here, but Gridx to Tulsa. We were selected by them for the soft lending, and we're gonna be there until December this year. We're gonna be in the U.S., so we're gonna have me and our CTO present on U.S. soil, so we can expand our company into the U.S. market, and also develop our own lab there. Have two labs, one in Brazil, one in the U.S., so we can better address different regional needs and validate a lot of proof of concepts with pharmas and so on. So that's a bit of the strategy we have set for this past few months. And we expect also to start raising a seed round this year, which we aim at closing in August, September. And this seed round is so that as soon as we have this soft landing in the U.S., which I said December, but we expect it to be done by July. So less than a few months from now, we'll be living in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And but the idea is for us to be there, raise the seed round so that we can expand the team, expand our operation there, have a larger lab, have a larger capacity of validating these data for pharma and generating this technology more, let's say, mature into a more mature level, having the real equipment on the lab bench, have the prototypes so that we can start testing them out and shipping them to interested investors and users.
I'm really curious about how are you planning to grow your team? What's the logic behind expanding on specific areas?
Going to be two major areas. First one is sales, obviously. So technical sales, which ain't easy. You gotta find someone who will be able to explain quantum electrochemistry, but on and sometimes on not so technical terms, but also understand that deeply. So it's gonna be a tough job finding these kind of profiles. But also, I think the easier part is hiring more people on the research and on the technical side. So having some more technicians, lab technicians, chemists working with us. So that's the end goal, so that we can also, besides doing the sales and marketing part of the company, also have people doing the operational. Because usually some companies like Krilltech, our operational side was factory workers. In our case, operational side are scientists or technicians or chemists, which are going to be doing these analysis on the lab. So,
What milestones do you hope to accomplish with the funds you're looking to raise with the seed round?
so seed round objectives is number one, have an established HQ in the US with the team already on the ground, sales and operations. Have also a present team in Europe for the EU market. We are already starting some conversations to do some proof of concepts right now this year. So we expect to have a team on the ground like later 2026. Uh, and also have this equipment being able to be produced by mid 2026. So we're going to start the project with some CDMOs to develop the device itself. And we expect, and we're going to do several and thorough testing with it. So that's going to also help us do this validation of the equipment, validation of if everything's working correctly as it should. Um, and also producing these prototypes by late 2026. So it's going to move us from, it's going to be really a seed round so that we can have the first equipment for our subscription business model of this equipment for pharma by the end of 2026.
You start in Brazil, you are expanding to the US. Why also expand to Europe during this early stage?
So our major focus is going to be the US. Let's say 90% of our focus is going to be there. But still, since we have interested parties in Europe and the market for drug discovery is very much split between US and Europe. We also have to be there in a way, not on a lab way, because that's going to be the US, but also be present so that we can capture opportunities in the European environment. Um, this is very much important because some of these companies are present both in the US and Europe. You have Pfizer, Merck, you have Novartis, you have Novo Nordisk. They are present both in the US and Europe, and their teams are sometimes different from each of these geographies. So it's very much important to be able to develop a relationship, at least with them in Europe. Um, and a lot of times they have the technical team in Europe, but they have the investment team in the US. So it's interesting to have the relationship with both teams so that maybe they become a future investor or a future buyer of the technology.
What has been the biggest challenge in building these relationships with these big players?
The biggest challenge is credential. Are they going to listen to you? And so are they going to sit down and be interested in what you're saying? Or are they just going to ignore you, not going to respond to you in email? Just because out of sheer ignorance, they don't know you. So who the hell are you? Where did you come from? So that's why the smart money is is very important. It's crucial at this step to make them sit down and listen to what you're saying, and there you can work your magic. So that's why we in this angel round we brought in a lot of smart money and a lot of intellectual capital besides the real capital to the table because we have to build these networks. And to do so, the easiest way is to identify people who already have these networks set in place and by the way became interested in your technology so we can work together in taking benefit of this already existent network and connecting to interesting individuals. So I think that was the one of the also the big objectives of this angel round is to bring in investors who have this sort of a knowledge or relationship in the markets, not just money. Because money, you can find like small quantities of money out there very easily, but finding the right capital for you for smart money, that's the tricky part.
Where did you find the right capital for Qnity?
You can say sometimes out of sheer luck, but if you uh, luck is something that happens to people who are prepared. There's this saying that goes. So, how do they meet them? You got to be present in events. You got to be out there. You got to be talking to a lot of people. You got to be connecting to several different folks in the innovation ecosystem. Sometimes, for example, one of this came from a contact I had in the agri-tech environment, but it's got nothing to do with health tech. It doesn't, but it does, because in innovation in general, we have people who are orbiting this innovation ecosystem, but they belong to different ecosystems. So networking is also about being available and being out there and being outspoken, being vocal about your needs, vocal about who you would like to meet, and in your journey, you're going to meet people that are going to be uh, enablers in doing so. So that's why I think being present in events, present in hubs, present in conferences allows you so much. Can sometimes turn that into real, let's say, outcome of an investment. You can turn that into a real ROI because it's very intangible, but it's very important so that you can meet the right people, and that's gonna enable your whole business.
What would you say is the most important characteristic of a deep tech founder?
If I say bold, it might be cliche, but we got to be extra bold in this ecosystem than in digital ecosystems, because capital is much more isn't that much more available than in other ecosystems, so it's very scarce. So there's this scarcity out there, and you also you also have to work not only with patient capital but patient uh, self patience, let's say, because also things are not going to be ready in a jiffy. So you gotta be patient on how long this process is going to be, and you got to be a long term fella. You got to be a long term gal, a long term guy, and see that okay, this technology is going to reach maturity in 5 years from now, and okay, how can I plan my life in 5 years? So that's also very important, to bring in your personal aspect to the table and rationalize: is this for me or is it not? Do we have that sort of patience to go to market? I'm not going to become a unicorn like people out there from the startup world like saying around. Just because someone in 3 weeks became a unicorn, you're not going to do that. It's semi impossible to do so in deep tech, because just if you're like a serial founder and everyone trusts you and you're going to push money into your company, it ain't going to happen normally. So you have to be very patient. You have to be very, let's say, long term planning. I have to so that you can be ready for it and be all the time working on these long term opportunities, because they're not going to be quick, and you're not going to be rapid in the response time. So always be patient. Patience and boldness. I think these are the two major aspects for a deep tech startup.
I really want to ask you how you think about putting boldness and patience into harmony.
That's tough. That's tough. Talking from I am a bit of an anxious guy, so it kind of bothers me sometimes, but it's good because it kind of balances out. Sometimes being too bold, you are going to become impatient. So you got to be bold enough to understand that your time is gonna be long. It's a different view, but you gotta understand and be very thoughtful of this process, which is going to be painstakingly long sometimes, but you got to be bold every single day during that process so that you can make it happen. And it's a bit of a balance out there that you need to have so that you either become too impatient or you either become too patient and you become like sort of a lazy guy, which don't actually work on your goals or your objectives because say, okay, it's gonna happen 5 years from now, so I'm just gonna chill. If you chill, it ain't gonna happen in 5 years. It's not gonna happen. So that's why there's this sort of a balanced equation there. Like a good chemical engineer, I like balanced equations, either mass or energy, but in this case, it's gonna be like I say, a boldness, patience, balance equation.
I love equations. So we talk about boldness and patience. We talk about luck being preparedness meeting opportunity. Do you have any other formulas around there?
There's this equation for deep tech startups which are working with universities. I think it patience plus tolerance equal to success. Because when we're working with the academia in general, you got to be patient because academia is even lower than the deep tech business because they don't have like a big objective or end goal or value proposition they ought to give out to investors in a couple of years from now. They don't. So they exist for the sole purpose of research or advancing education. So it's very beautiful and philosophical, but at the end of the day, it's not very practical. So usually they have their own timelines, they have their own schedules, and you have to be very tolerant and into how to balance okay, I'm going to accept that or I'm not going to accept that. And we have to do something better. And since my first company, also we had patents with the university. This company, we also have patents with the university. So you have to understand and be very tolerant and be very flexible and be able to work around this bureaucracy that sometimes happens. Sometimes I'm being very optimistic. Every time, it always happens when working with the university. So be very tolerant. So patience plus tolerance when working with deep tech startup in a university or institute or whatever academia equals to success. That's another equation out there.
I have a final question for you. What's next for Qnity in pursuit of this success?
Next page is Tulsa. So that's something we're very excited to start this new journey. We know it's going to be a huge enabler for either investments because we're going to be in the U.S., boots on the ground, but also going to be a huge enabler for potential clients which are located in the U.S. to validate our tech, to then start becoming users or clients of our technology. So I think this is the major let's say milestone we have ahead of us this next few months is to do the soft landing and thus move on to the seed round.
Diego, this has been great. Thank you very much for doing this again. And where people can find you and learn more about Qnity.
Yeah, you can look up in LinkedIn for Qnity and for me, Diego Stone Iris. I'm the guy that has like a Chinese character after his name. If you're wondering, I do study Chinese as well, so that's why I have my Chinese name there, which is Li Zhi. If someone's interested in Chinese culture, uh, but look me up in LinkedIn. I'm very active there. Qnity is also active there. We have our website too, qnity.bio. We're actually going through a remodeling of the website for the seed round. So the next few months, we're going to have a different website. But if you want to look us there, it's a very, very simple landing page. But we'll be posting a lot in these next few weeks and months on LinkedIn, talking about our development and our moving to Tulsa as well.
Awesome. I'll make sure to link that on the show notes. Thank you very much. Hoping to talk to you soon
Thank you,
again.
Juan. Thank you so much. Take care.